Let's talk about genre. We know the main ones: drama, comedy, western, musical, action, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and so on. We know that genre is basically a term applied to a collection of tropes used to more easily categorize films. Without genres, Netflix would just be a single page with thousands of movies that would take hours to scroll through. But genres are flexible. Filmmakers can use the expectations we impose upon a genre to surprise us, shifting from one to another or using elements of multiple genres, combining them in ways to create something new. These genre hybrids most often seem to be something combined with comedy. So action comedy, western comedy, sci-fi comedy, musical comedy, and horror comedy.
That's right, a lovely stroll on the moors. Tra-la-la-la-la. Isn't this fun?
Horror comedy, in theory, seems odd, since the two genres by nature are designed to elicit entirely different responses from an audience. Comedies make us laugh, they make us happy, they provide joy. Horror movies prey upon our deep primal fears, unsettling us and disturbing us. When successful, they stress us out. But what's interesting about these two is that they're also the genres that cause the most visceral reactions. When successful, these movies cause pure, uncontrollable laughter, or genuine fear. I mean, Psycho actually made people afraid of showers. While their aims are very different, comedy and horror both affect us on a base level that sets them apart from other genres. So what happens when the line between them blurs? What's fascinating to me about horror comedy is that there are several radically different ways to approach it. Maybe the most popular method is putting comedic characters into a horror story, which started way back in 1948 with Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. They provide jokes and humor, while the horror elements are pretty much played straight. This method was perfected in John Landis's An American Werewolf in London, and can be seen more recently in Edgar Wright's Shaun of the Dead. Then there's the metatextual approach, which you'll find in Scream or Cabin in the Woods, where the comedy comes from the recognition and subversion of familiar horror tropes. With both these methods, the movies generally balance the genres by having a horror scene, then a comedy scene.
I'm still on speakerphone, aren't I?
But there's another approach, one used by one of my favorite filmmakers and one of the masters of horror comedy, Sam Raimi.
And if there's a good scare and it's working, they'll shriek their heads off in unison. And if you've made the movie and you've got a horror movie in a good house, in a good crowd like that, there's no greater thrill in the world to watch them scream. You just kind of giggle in the background. It's great. It's you really feel like you're entertaining them and that it's working.
There's nothing inherently comedic about Raimi's movies. On paper, Evil Dead 2 is classic horror. People go to a cabin in the woods and are mostly killed by evil spirits. The characters themselves are not comedic. No plot points are comedic. In this movie, all the comedy comes from the execution. I've watched Evil Dead 2 with a lot of people, and I've seen some find it terrifying and others find it hilarious. Unlike most horror comedies that have funny parts and scary parts, here the funny parts are the scary parts, and vice versa. What Raimi recognizes is that the construction of a scare is more or less the same as the construction of a laugh. There's a setup.
Why are you so sweaty?
And a payoff.
I was watching Cops.
Suspense. Then a scare. So instead of making the scares and laughs distinct units, he intertwines them, making them the same thing. The first Evil Dead, which has an almost identical story to the sequel, is pretty much all serious horror. What's fascinating about Evil Dead 2 is how easily this serious horror can be tipped into comedy. The key tool in Raimi's approach is tone. He sets the stage by exaggerating surface elements: the dialogue, the lighting, the camera movements, and the sound design. While the content is still clearly horror, the tone is heightened enough that it takes very little effort to tip it into comedy. So once this exaggerated world full of stylized, hyperkinetic visual storytelling is established, Raimi uses tones like musical notes, playing them in just the right sequence to put the audience through a roller coaster experience. Let's break down an actual horror scene. The one where Ash's girlfriend, who he was forced to kill a few minutes earlier when she was possessed by evil spirits, comes back from the dead, headless, to attack him. It starts with a funny visual gag, then jumps to shocking horror, then absurd escalating gore, then slapstick comedy, then high melodrama,
You swore that we'd always be together. I love you.
then over-the-top gore. If we were to chart the tone of this scene on a graph, it would look something like this. One of Raimi's regular approaches is to begin a horror scene playing it straight, then making it comedic by the speed and level of the escalation, and in particular, the level of the gore or blood or maggots or whatever gross thing he's using in that scene. Because things escalate so quickly within the exaggerated environment he's already created, we can't help but laugh. This scene in Drag Me to Hell begins as regular horror. There's suspense, we wait for something to happen, then the reveal of the old witch, and then immediately... Raimi goes from straight horror to gross-out humor in seconds. The scene jumps in intensity so fast we can't help but laugh. Look at the extended POV shot of the disembodied force chasing Ash through the house. It goes on for so long and crashes through so many doors that it gets funnier and funnier, kind of becoming the horror version of the rake scene from The Simpsons. There's an eternal debate in cinema about whether a film being manipulative is a bad thing or an inherent part of the medium. My stance on it is that there is bad manipulation, like the scene in Crash where the movie tricks you into thinking a little girl got shot, but surprise, she actually didn't. But the way Raimi does it, there's nothing dishonest. His brand of manipulation rests on knowing how we will react to certain things, and aiming to put us through a sort of funhouse experience, eliciting the most visceral reaction possible. Look at the first set piece in Drag Me to Hell, a fight taking place inside a car. In a single scene, Raimi makes us jump, cheer, clench our teeth, laugh, cringe, and gasp. This scene is written as pretty much straight horror, and most directors would play it that way, with a consistent tone throughout. But Raimi believes either that it's more effective, or maybe just more fun, to have a tone that, moment to moment, jumps from scary to funny, dark to light, then back again. It's a generally accepted rule in cinema that a consistent tone is key to whether a movie works, and usually I agree with this. In a recent video, I talked a lot about the importance of verisimilitude, and breaking an established tone is usually a great way to break the verisimilitude, taking an audience out of the movie. But for Raimi, shifting tones is just another part of his filmmaking arsenal, and he's skilled enough that he's able to use it to surprise us without it feeling out of place. Spider-Man 2, maybe the best superhero movie of the 21st century, seamlessly moves from sincere drama to over-the-top horror to goofy comedy to thrilling action. This willingness to juggle tones allows his storytelling to be more inventive. I think to understand Raimi, we just need to go back to that interview from 1987. With all his horror comedies, you can imagine Raimi giggling in the back of the theater as we all scream and laugh and fling our popcorn in the air.
Oh yeah, it's got a lot in it to grab the audience.
There's only one movie scarier than The Evil Dead 2. Kiss your nerves goodbye.
Hey guys, thank you for watching. Now I want to mention that this video was sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is a really cool site offering a ton of extensive, in-depth video courses on everything from film production to art to graphic design. I've been watching stuff on there recently and learning from it, and I know a lot of aspiring filmmakers watch this channel, and I think you guys in particular could really benefit from this and really learn a lot. So go click the link in the description and use the promo code PatrickH, and you'll get 2 free months. So go do that. If you want to help us make more of these videos, check out the Patreon. If you want to yell at me about things or get updates on what we're working on, follow me on all those social medias. I'll see some of you at Comic-Con this week. Wow, so close. And for the rest of you, I'll see you next Wednesday.